were Moravian musicians from Salem, North Carolina. They were very religious men. Shortly sometime after they crossed the river, the band leader, Sam Mickey, was summoned to the headquarters of the Confederate Army. Sam was really terrified that the general was going to ask the band to put away their instruments and pick up muskets because they were so short of men. But quite the contrary happened. Lee actually told the band, no, we want you to keep playing because of the solace and the esprit de corps that the music brings to the men. So keep doing what you do. And he made the famous remark, I don't believe we can have an army without music. So the band was able to keep their instruments. They went back, got their horns, came back to play for General Lee his favorite tune, a song called Come Dearest, the Daylight is Gone. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Welcome. I'm Mary Boswell. I'm Executive Director of the Historical Society of Frederick County. And on behalf of the board and the staff and the volunteers of the Historical Society, we welcome you to this historic moment in the chapter of Frederick and the city of Frederick. I want to first mention a few things before we start with our program. We want to let you know that you are invited immediately following this program to come inside and see our exhibit, Huzzah for Liberty, that features the ransom documents that are owned by the city of Frederick. These are the original ransom documents for which this entire program is focused on. The original ransom documents are owned by the city of Frederick, and we are very pleased and proud to have our partnership with the city of Frederick, as well as with PNC Bank, which generously contributed the funds to sponsor the conservation of these documents. And without that, which was done by Nancy Purinton, we would not be able to show you these documents today. Also want to mention that the exhibit is made possible by 2 significant grants from the Maryland Area Heritage Authority Program and the TRIP program of the Tourism Council of Frederick County. Also, after this program, we have a ransom reception co-hosted by the Historic Society of Frederick County and the National Museum of Civil War Medicine. This will be in our Heritage Garden out back. And ransom beer is provided by Brewers Alley. Now I'm going to turn the program over to John Fiesler, who is Executive Director of the Visitor Center and the Tourism Council of Frederick County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks to the Historical Society for your hospitality hosting this program today. And what a beautiful day we have. I think a lot nicer day than they were experiencing 150 years ago. So we'll make the most of it. We see that the 26th North Carolina Regimental Band, those Southern boys are no dummies. They found the shade. Here, here. Huzzah! We'll have another opportunity to hear them a little bit later on this evening, so stay tuned as we tell you the details of the day. It is my role here to sort of set the stage for what was happening 150 years ago here in the Frederick area and the surrounding region. And certainly if you come through and see the wonderful exhibit inside here, that will help fill in the details. So jumping back to the summer of 1864, we didn't have the motorcycles going through town then, but a lot of horses. Frederick had been in the Civil War really since its very first days. Really the raid on Harper's Ferry by John Brown in 1859, when the militias from Frederick, who were in fact the fire companies, were the first from outside of Harper's Ferry to respond and actually contain the situation there until the Marines responded. They marched to the train station just a couple blocks from here, rode over there, and ever since then, 1861, just down the street here, a few doors, we hosted the Maryland legislature. The first and only time it's ever met outside of Annapolis, called for an extraordinary session of the legislature to determine whether Frederick, or Maryland rather, should secede from the Union the way the states to the south did. As it turned out, the federal government would arrest and detain those legislators that thought were going to vote the wrong way from the federal government's perspective, and in fact they never were able to get a quorum. That is how Maryland remained in the Union. Just a year later, in 1862, we saw Robert E. Lee and his Confederate Army come right through the center of town here, his Maryland campaign. It would be followed a couple of days later after the Barbara Fritchie incident, made famous by a poem, with the Battle of South Mountain on September the 14th, September the 17th, the Battle of Antietam, just west of here in Washington County. The next year, summer of 1863, the entire Union Army of the Potomac would come right through town here, most of them marching right up Market Street. Local residents said it took as long as 12 hours to cross from one side of Market Street to the other, waiting for a break in the continuous stream of soldiers, wagons, pontoon boats, and everything else they were hauling through town. And then in 1864, the war was back and closer than ever for the citizens of Frederick. There was a great deal of concern. At this point, Ulysses S. Grant is in charge of the Union Army. He is down surrounding Lee in Petersburg, the Richmond and Petersburg area held under siege. And the climate has changed quite a bit too. Frederick County residents remarked in 1862, 2 years earlier, how disciplined and polite the Confederate soldiers were as they marched through Maryland. They were under strict orders from Lee that they were going to behave up here. They did not want to be seen as an invading army. In fact, they saw themselves as liberators, believing Maryland was held in the Union against its will. And so again, they were not pillaging. They were very polite as they came through. 63, pretty much the same. By 64, it had changed quite a bit. Grant was ready to end this thing. He had given the order to General David Hunter to destroy anything in the South that could aid the Southern war effort. And so Hunter would go through the Shenandoah Valley. Farms and houses were destroyed. VMI was burned. The governor's house was burned. The war was taking a decidedly nastier turn at this point in any attempt to try to put an end to the hostility that had gone on for so many years at this point. So as I said, Lee is under siege in Petersburg. He orders one of his generals, Jubal Early, to take some men and start marching north down the Shenandoah Valley, as they say, following it downstream, and get in, first chase Hunter out of the valley, and then if possible, cross into Maryland, come around and threaten the national capital, all in hopes of taking some of the Union pressure off of Petersburg, again where that siege is continuing. So Early begins working his way north, crosses into Maryland. The city of Hagerstown would be ransomed. Now, as I said, this is a big change from when these polite Confederates were coming through earlier. Some of them wanted revenge, and on top of that, they were pretty much out of supplies. They were hungry, without clothes, and they were after whatever supplies they could get in the Union. So Hagerstown would be ransomed for $20,000. There are some believe they left a zero off, and it should have been $200,000, but $20,000 was the ransom there. As they began to march to the east, Middletown would be ransomed for $5,000. Again, a very small town. The Burges at the time pleaded that there was no way the town could come up with that money, and so Early made a compromise. He said the town proper would raise $1,500. The remaining $3,500 would come from the surrounding election district, the Middletown Valley. As it turned out, Union troops would start heading west, and the $1,500 was paid, but Middletown got off easy. They didn't have to come up with the remaining $3,500. That brings us to the western edge of Frederick, where on July the 7th there would be a battle There's a marker that tells that story out by the Red Horse Steakhouse today, and then July 8th would be upon us. At this point, the Union General Lew Wallace figured out that Early was after Washington, D.C. He began to move what troops he had south of town to Frederick Junction or Monocacy Junction, just below the city, to try to block that path toward Washington. July the 8th would end. That night would be very uneasy for the citizens of Frederick, and as July 9th would dawn and the sun would come up, it was going to be another sunny, hot July day in Frederick.
Excuse me, is the mayor available?
Whom shall I say is calling?
Lieutenant Colonel William Allen.
Good morning, Mr. Brangle. I do hate to bother you, but there are some Confederate officers here asking to see Mayor Cole.
Okay.
So, nice weather we're having, eh?
Weather's okay here, but it's getting a lot hotter south of town.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Mayor, we have a request from General Early. Major?
Sir? By order of Lieutenant General Jubal A. Early, commanding, we require the mayor and town citizens of Frederick City $200,000 in current money for the use of this money. The contribution may be supplied by furnishing the medical department with $50,000 in stores at current prices, the commissary department with stores in the same amount, the ordnance department with the same, and the quartermaster department in like amount. Signed, Lieutenant Colonel William Allen, Chief of Ordnance, Army of the Valley District, Major W.D. Hawks, Chief of Commissary, CSA, Army of the Valley District. Sir?
Lieutenant Colonel Allen, this amount is far too much for a small town like us here in Frederick. We only have 8,000 residents. This demand is 10 times the amount that you asked for from the city of Hagerstown just a few days ago. My city's net worth is only $2.2 million. That is based on 37.5 cents per $100 based on the revenue of the city. It's only $8,000 we can come up with.
That's really not my problem. One of the things we know in Frederick is a major military supply depot. There must be over $2 million worth of medical and military supplies. Either deliver the supplies, deliver the cash, or suffer irreparable consequences. Major, search the town for supplies. We'll be back in several hours.
Attention and coding.
Who's the responsible for efficiency?
Shoulder.
I think it means a big problem we're going to have. I fear they're going to destroy our city, and we can't let that happen.
My file, right?
I agree. That would certainly be bad for tourism.
We'll be back.
The people of Frederick must do their part to help gather this contribution. We have to proceed at once, as we don't have much time. Thank goodness it's first Saturday, and hopefully we can rely on the charity of our visitors, just like this strange man said.
Mr. Mayor, how do you propose we raise $200,000? How do you should the corporation also go to the banks for assistance?
Only as a last resort should we go to the banks. Borrowing that large amount of money, with a compounded interest rate of who knows how much, could literally take 87 years to pay off.
That would be 1951. I will summons the Common Council and other town leaders at once.
Residents, guests of our fair city, I implore you, please help us raise this $200,000.
And you all can help. Now to explain just how is Stephen Colella from the Downtown Frederick Partnership.
Yes.
Turn it over to Steve to explain it.
All right, everyone, welcome and thank you for coming out. Downtown Frederick Partnership is very pleased to be partnering with these wonderful organizations, Tourism, the Historical Society of Frederick County, along with the City of Frederick to provide the ransom activity. So we have created what we are calling ransom dollars. Yes. These ransom dollars have been distributed to the vast majority of the businesses and restaurants in downtown Frederick. So as you're visiting today, as you're shopping and eating at your favorite boutiques and restaurants, Ask about ransom dollars, collect them. On the back, there is a list of collection locations, and we'll also have wandering collectors throughout the day. And then later this evening, we will determine whether we raised the ransom successfully in front of Brewers Alley at 7:30 this evening. So please join us there, and thank you again.
So please enjoy this beautiful first Saturday that we have. While you're here, be sure to check out the exhibit inside, including the original ransom documents. Don't miss the garden in the back. Great reception and beautiful setting. And of course, plenty of choices. And as Steve mentioned tonight, by Brewers Alley, the 26th North Carolina Regimental Band will be performing there, 7:30 to 8:30. At 8:30, we'll find out if we were successful in raising the ransom and saving our fair city. Enjoy the day. Big thank you to the 26th North Carolina Regimental Band for entertaining us this evening. And a good evening. I'm John Fiesler with the Tourism Council of Frederick County, and we're going to pick up the story that started earlier today. But jumping back a couple of years, you know, we recounted how Frederick had been involved in the Civil War for several years by the time we got to the summer of 1864. In 1862, when the Confederates first arrived in the streets of downtown Frederick, we actually commemorated that anniversary at the Weinberg Center with the unveiling of the documentary, Heart of the Civil War. Hopefully you had a chance to join us that evening. And if you were there, you saw these gentlemen in their alter ego, the Federal City Brass Band, as well as the 26th North Carolina Regimental Band. So they played music on both sides and do a wonderful job with it. So to pick up our 1864 story, again in 62 the Confederates came through. They were perfect gentlemen. Robert E. Lee had ordered them that when they were in Maryland, they were not going to act like invaders. They saw themselves as liberators. thinking Maryland was held in the Union against its will. They were not going to tear the place up. And in fact, Frederick County citizens remarked how well disciplined the Confederates were. Matter of fact, in the Middletown Valley, there were comments that they saw a couple of Confederate soldiers hanged by the Confederate Army because they had gone off pillaging. Quite a different story 2 years later. Union General David Hunter had torn up the Shenandoah Valley, the breadbasket of the Confederacy. The Confederates were seeking revenge. They were also out of supplies. Frederick was a major Union supply depot, and the Confederates knew it. So when they arrived here, they really wanted stores. They wanted clothes, they wanted medicine, they wanted food, and the like. The Union, knowing they were coming, had packed up as much of the stuff stored in Frederick as they could. Everybody thought it was all gone. In fact, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth still hidden around town in various places, as was the money from the banks. When the banks had to help round up the ransom, it wasn't in the vaults. It was scattered all about, but there were folks that knew where it was. And so, because there was enough Union sentiment here not to help the Confederacy by giving them the supplies they sought, the call went out to raise $200,000. Earlier today, we challenged all of you to help with that, and we have seen you out and about town. The merchants and the restaurateurs have been very happy about that, as you have collected those dollars and turned them into the baskets. And in fact, 150 years ago this week, that is how the ransom of Frederick was paid, in baskets right here, where the town offices were located, where Brewers Alley stands today. So we want to thank all of you for coming out and helping out on such a beautiful day as we have enjoyed here for First Saturday, as we commemorate the anniversary of the ransom of Frederick, the very same day that the Battle of Monocacy was going on just south of town.
Excuse me.
Sir.
Have you decided whether to pay the ransom or give us the supplies?
Lieutenant Colonel Allen, let me summon the mayor. Call Mayor Cole forward, determine if the city of Frederick is in fact going to pay the ransom.
Hello, Lieutenant Colonel.
Evening, Mayor.
How are you?
Good enough.
Today, we, the Town Fathers, passed the following resolution. Mayor's Office, City of Frederick, July 9th, 1864. Whereas the Lieutenant General commanding the Confederate Army, now occupying the town, has made a demand on the corporate authorities for the sum of $200,000. And whereas, at a meeting of the corporate authorities of said town held this day, the following proceedings were had with the concurrence and approval of the citizens present. Resolved by the mayor, aldermen, and common council of Frederick, that the several banking and savings institutions of the town be requested to furnish so much of said sum of $200,000 pro rata according to their several and respective abilities, and that the corporate authorities will proceed at the earliest possible moment to reimburse said bankings and savings institutions by levying upon the citizens of said corporation, in proportion to their ability, a sufficient tax to cover the same. Resolved by the authority aforesaid, that the mayor, Messrs. Sifford, Bruner of the Board of Aldermen, John A. Simmons and Thomas M. Holburner of the Board of Common Council, and Joseph Bogger, R.H. Marshall, Louis M. Nixdorf, Calvin Page, and E. Albaugh Esquire be authorized to demand said funds and pay over the same to the proper officer of said army. By the order of the board, July 9th, passed. Myself, William G. Cole, Mayor.
That's great. We have a date down with Abraham Lincoln that we need to be getting more moved on. Show me the money. Major, take a look at counting. real money?
Yes, sir. Real Frederick money.
Real Frederick money, huh? About 200,000 there? Give them the receipt, Major.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere without a receipt. We want a receipt. Thank you.
Then, collect the baskets. Thank you. Hope we won't be visiting you again.
Us too. Okay, now that they're gone, I would like to say to the citizens, to the visitors of the great city of Frederick, thank you very much for bailing us out. We think by 1951 we may pay this back off. Thank you very much for participating in this great event. Thank you for coming out. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mayor McClement, Alderman Michael O'Connor, Alderman Kelly Russell for joining us today. Want to mention that the gentleman who played Lawrence Sprengel, John Crawford, is in fact a descendant of William Cole, who was mayor of Frederick 150 years ago. We thank you, playing as the mayor's assistant. Rob Griesbach and his crew that ransomed the town, the Confederates, George Pete, who set that up, our friends at the Historical Society of Frederick County. Hopefully you had a chance to see that original ransom note exhibit. It continues through the rest of the year at the Museum of Frederick County History, right down Church Street. And we hope that you enjoy a wonderful evening tonight. Again, the anniversary activities continue at Monocacy Battlefield. And of course, there is a brand new Bad Old Man Ransom Ale available here at Brewers Alley that you may enjoy. General Lee called General Jubal Early his bad old man, and so now we have a beer to remember him by. So again, thank you all. Thanks to the band and for all who participated, all of you for helping to pay the ransom and save our fair city. Enjoy the night.